Last-minute shakeup at 5:30 a.m., laundry situation not good. And when your focus is on helping your clients, it's easy to forget about yourself. But NASM knows trainers.
Morning, Ryan. Is okay with
And staying in front of the day isn't always
Nice,
as simple
Ryan.
as 1,
What's
2,
up?
3. So when the unexpected has you pressing pause,
What's the latest on creatine?
I'm going to get back to you on that.
let NASM1 help you press play. Visit NASM.org to sign up for a membership today.
You're listening to the NASM-CPT Podcast with Richey, winner of the Share Care Emmy Award for Social Storytelling and the official podcast of the National Academy of Sports Medicine.
Hey, y'all, and welcome to the NASM-CPT Podcast. My name is Richey, and today I have a special guest. And the reason why this person is a special guest, I actually just met him a few moments ago, but I've known this name within the industry since I started training. And so I got my first job as a personal trainer in February of 2002. And this guy's name, I'm in New York City. He's based out of New Jersey. But you don't have to be a neighboring state to know who he is. He's been around for a while and legendary. I remember I worked at a New York sports club and I learned his name then. And then I went on and I started training at a place called Velocity, which was kind of a speed conditioning, a sports conditioning franchise. And I was a trainer there for a while. Well, his name came up quite a bit in that as well. And so the more I started working with athletic performance, the more that name just keeps popping up. It keeps popping up again. So I'm fortunate today because one of our producers reached out and was like, hey, what do you think about having this person on the podcast? And I was like, are you kidding me? That'd be so dope. I've never met him, never been to his workshop, but I even train a client today. She is a personal trainer and she's been in the industry for a decade longer than I've been. And she was, oh, I know him. Yeah, I went to one of his workshops. I went to his place out in New Jersey. He did a lot of stuff for Perform Better when he would speak on the circuit with them. And so it is my pleasure, my privilege, and a great opportunity for me to introduce him to you. Welcome to the show, Bill Parisi.
Thank you, Rick. That was quite an introduction. I hope I live up to it for you. But excited to be here and have a tremendous amount of respect for you, Rick, and NASM and the content you guys put out. Really, really second to none in terms of getting people to become fitness professionals.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Now, for me hyping you up, let me turn it over to you because I will never do it enough justice. You've done so much more than I even know about. So tell the listeners a little bit about you. What's your background? What do you currently do? What are some of the highlights in the career? And then let's get into talking about our topic today about understanding speed and athleticism and also using that to help build business.
Yep. Well, it all started for me in high school. I was an undersized athlete. Played football, my first love. Coach said, go out for track to get faster. I wasn't fast as a high school athlete. Went out for track. My coach said, track coach said, try all the events. Tried all the events. Took a liking to the javelin. Was pretty good.
Oh, cool.
By my senior year, I was a top 10 thrower and went to the U.S. Junior Olympics and was very excited to try and make the Junior Olympic team. And the top 2 place finishers were going to Japan that year. This was 1985. And I was in second place on the last thrower in the last throw of the meet. And I was so excited to wear that red, white, and blue USA uniform. And on the last throw of the meet, I got beat by 2 inches.
Oh, what?
I was devastated. And that moment was my biggest setback in my life at that time, but set me up for my biggest comeback. And that's when I went on a quest. And it's been believe it or not, coming up on a 40-year quest. I'm going to be 58, a 40-year quest of searching for cutting-edge training content. That led me to become a Division I, 2-time All-American in college in the javelin throw. Now, as a 5-foot North Jersey Italian, we're not supposed to throw the javelin too far. They're typically 6'5" Norwegians, Swedes, Finns, right? North Jersey Italians, we're supposed to make pizza, lay brick, give high interest loans for cash, be in the garbage business. So anyway, that learning how to compete in that event, because the javelin, to be really good, you have to run really fast down a runway with a 7-foot spear and all of a sudden stop yourself. So I learned all about speed, power, strength, mobility, athleticism, ground reaction force, and how to transfer ground reaction force through your body. And I went on this quest, went to college, wind up earning a full scholarship for the javelin, and at a high level, went to the Olympic trials, traveled to Europe, and learning everything about how to become a better javelin thrower. And when I got out of school, I went to Florida, University of Florida. I was a GA down there for the Gators, and I was the head strength coach for the track team. We had 3 Olympians. I was 22 years old and was still competing. I was training with American Olympian Tom Puskis. Continued to learn a ton. That was under the Spurrier era of the Gators, and then moved north and started working with the New York Giants. I was, trained Phil Simms, and in the beginning of my career, and always going to seminars, literally traveling the world since 1989. And Phil Simms was my first serious client. He was a Super Bowl MVP. And I was still in undergraduate school, being an All-American jav thrower, because I met the New York Giants strength coach at a seminar I attended. And I just got back from Finland, where I was competing and came off an All-American season. So he said, come down to Giant Stadium and show Phil Simms those medicine balls you've been doing. I've been doing 10,000 medicine ball reps in a winter. That was one of my protocols, 35 years ago, doing 10,000 med balls throughout a 4-month cycle. And I realized when I was a young age, 24, when I hung up my competing cleats, that training to be a great javelin thrower, where I needed to develop speed, athleticism, stopping ability, which is huge in multi-directional speed, your ability to decelerate and transfer those ground reaction forces. I said, every field in court sport athlete needs this.
Yeah.
I took my own training, applied it, went to, took anatomy, took an, exercise physiology on the graduate level, because I have an undergrad in finance. I have my Series 7. I have my Series 66. Financial advisor. I never did that.
That's a totally different skill set right there.
Totally different skill set, but I had all those business skills, and that helped me, eventually grow my business. But so I'm a kind of a unicorn in the sense of, having that finance background and understanding the mechanics of business, at the same time being a fairly high level athlete, Division I All-American in an event. And having a thirst for knowledge, and always trying to find opportunities where I'm the dumbest guy in the room. Like, that's been my quest. And as I've grown older, it's been harder to do that, but I can still do that.
Yeah, well, there are some really, really brilliant minds out there. And here's the other thing, is that it's not always that somebody is smarter than you or more brilliant than you. It's just they have a different knowledge base than you have.
That's exactly right.
And so you're like, well, I'm pretty good at this amount of information, and this is my lane, but I want to know more about this. I want to know more of that. So for instance, you and I were talking earlier about fascia.
Yeah.
And that has been kind of a new focus for you, right? Like that, what was it that caught your attention with fascia and then made you go, oh, how can I make application with that and put that into my sports performance and speed and athleticism courses?
Well, what's interesting is I don't think there's another athletic event that utilizes connective tissue and fascia to be successful than the javelin. In terms of, obviously we use fascia. Fascia is part of the system, part of the musculoskeletal myofascial system. But in terms of allowing or helping performance, fascia plays a big role in the javelin. And I didn't know that, really understand that until about, 5 to 7 years ago. I started to unpack that a lot more. So I didn't realize, as a javelin thrower doing 10,000 medicine balls in a winter, a lot of my success came from training my fascia system. So what really made me discover it is I have 2 sons. One son started playing competitive basketball in the 8th grade. He made a Nike EYBL team, which is a pretty high level traveling, basketball team. And I went to a tournament that he was competing at. And I was watching, he was only in 8th grade, but I was watching these, 14U, 15U, 16U kids play basketball. And the EYBL is an invite only Nike high level basketball players. And these events take place at usually convention centers with, 30 or 40 full courts all going on at once. And I was watching these young kids play above the rim and get down the court in like 5 or 6 strides. Like I was watching and witnessing insane athleticism. Like every kid was insanely athletic. And I noticed no one was really carrying a lot of muscle tissue. I was like, wow, like any one of these kids can probably be D1 football tomorrow, right? Not everyone's going to be D1 basketball. Like D1 basketball, NBA, those guys are the greatest athletes in the world, bar none, right? What they can do at their body size, how they can move, how they can create ground reaction force, how they can leap and jump and change direction. And I said, there's something other than muscle or the neurology driving their athleticism. There's something different because we've been looking at the muscular system, the neurology, the nervous system and how it intervenes and how it manages tissue, muscle tissue, and the cardiovascular system has kind of been the focus of most training protocols. And I said, you know what, there's another system in here that we've been ignoring. And then I started to really talk to different people and different mentors and just kind of started to unpack it. But that was a defining moment for me where I said, there's something else here, just being in that environment and observing. And I went up to a lot of the kids. I said, can you tell me a little bit about your off-season training? and the answer I got from 14, 15, 16, and 17 years old, this was the exact answer. I play a lot of ball, man.
Yeah.
Like I play a lot of ball and I do a little bit of weight training and whatnot, but they move in a lot of different directions often.
So let me ask you a question, knowing what you know now, and you got pretty far, obviously, with your javelin. Would you change your training knowing what you know with your fascial content, or what you did back then when you were training with javelin?
A great question. I got hugely lucky. I wouldn't really change much. Now, I didn't know I was training the fascia system doing all those med balls, but I knew a lot of bench pressing wasn't good.
Wasn't helping you whip that javelin down the field?
Yep. And I'll give you a research study around that. But I got lucky. Like I just got it right. And for 5'10", I threw pretty far, just about 80 yards was my best. It was 238 feet. So, but no, I just got it right. And I knew I didn't do a lot of upper body. And I just, you almost know, like being a pitcher, like throwing a baseball. Yeah. And Robert Schleip, who's a German scientist, who's a colleague of mine, a PhD, one of the top researchers on connective tissue and fascia. The Germans are way ahead. They really are much further along than most of our American colleagues in terms of the study and the science of connective tissue and fascia. But he did an ultrasound on Thomas Roller's right pec. Thomas Roller won the gold medal in the javelin throw in 2016. He's a German javelin thrower. And he identified in that ultrasound a 4 millimeter aponeurosis going across his right pec. And when he went across his left pec, it was a 0.5 millimeter aponeurosis.
Oh, wow. So
he basically created, an upper body Achilles tendon, to create that whip. So that's just one example, but there's more. And, this connective tissue, we have our fascia slings, and we know they can now be developed based on our performance and based on our movement patterns. And this is a collagen network made up of predominantly type 1 collagen within a ground substance of proteoglycans, glycosaminoglycans, hyaluronic acid. It's called hyaluron now. But these are polymers, carbohydrate polymers, which are basically like, snot. And I like to describe it as, wet concrete, your ground substance, which are these polymers, are like your wet cement, and your collagen is like the rebar inside the wet cement. And that's fascia. It's everywhere in your body, holds our cells together. It holds muscle together. It holds organs. It's wrapped around nerves. And it really is the framework of our living organism. We know now that it can be trained. We know it's highly nerve innervated. Up to 8 times the amount of proprioceptors are in this connective tissue than muscle. That's non-negotiable. 6 to 8 times. We know definitely 6. But, understanding it now and how to change it through mechanical transduction, through, obviously mechanical forces and how that signals the biochemistry and how that signals the development of the fibroblast cells to lay down more collagen or eat up old collagen. We know that, just like we know osteoblasts build bone when we put stress on it. And if we stress the body in the right way, in the right form, we're going to build this collagen network. And sometimes the challenge is the collagen network gets built in ways we don't want it. If we sit all day and we're at a desk, well, we get a lot of these fibroblast cells laying down collagen in a matted format, like a felt type format, where the collagen is all kind of going in all different directions, and it's very tight, like carpeting.
Yeah, the collagen matrix.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's very hard to kind of break up. You need manual work. But if we train correctly, the collagen is more like a network of a. I have an example. The collagen network is like lattice fence, and that's much more advantageous for athleticism. So that's really something important. And I have something here. I thought I had it in my bag. That's something that I think is really valuable to understand from a coaching perspective, that when we train, we're not just training muscle, right? So we're training. So this is a Chinese finger stick.
Oh yeah.
And, the material, the collagen, we want to have it in that shape, right? That's important. So this is an example. This is kind of like that, 55-degree angle, and it's springy. So that collagen is embedded in a ground substance, which is similar to something like this, that the viscosity of the ground substance can change, right? So this ground substance is made up of, the proteoglycans, glycosaminoglycans, these polymers, and this collagen is actually embedded in as part of this.
Right.
And then, so if this is all matted up, this doesn't have the ability to be pliable or flexible and to be athletic. And understanding that now at a deep level, and knowing how now to trigger that with exercise or different types of exercise to create mechanical transduction, which is the way to signal a change in the body through mechanical load to develop this connective tissue, this collagen network, which is non-energy dependent. So there's no metabolic cost to this tissue, which is powerful, because if we can develop this system more in our athletes, they're going to have higher work capacities and they're going to be more injury resilient. So this is really, really cutting edge stuff. I had the opportunities to lecture to, UConn men and women's basketball, University of Oregon, athletic coaches and athletic trainers, University of Tennessee. I'm heading down to do a lecture for the NHL strength coaches in a few weeks. I gave the NFL strength coaches this lecture. So this is new cutting edge stuff that, we're excited to help pioneer.
Oh, it's amazing. That's fascinating information. I love that you shared that with us. And I'm going to be back to you on that in just a moment. Ladies and gentlemen, this episode of the NASM-CPT Podcast is brought to you by NASM One, the membership for trainers and coaches. Members enjoy unlimited access to hundreds of career resources. Get the Edge app to schedule and program clients. Enjoy half off all certifications and specializations, access to free CEUs, and more. All of this for just $35 a month. Go to NASM.org/membership to learn more about NASM One. All right, now back to my guest today. We've got Coach Bill Parisi here that is talking to us currently about fascia, which I find to be absolutely fascinating. But I also want to say something. It hit me while I was just talking. You had mentioned something when I just love the way that you framed this. You said my biggest setback led to my biggest comeback. And that goes to, we were talking about physical, but this really goes towards like mental fortitude, the strength mentally as an athlete, as you do what you do, because you can be really strong. And I've known some really incredible players that had a kind of almost innate skill set, and they just relied on the skills that the athletic ability that they were born with, and they didn't refine it, which works in high school, sometimes works in college, and then they get to the big leagues and everybody's great. The person that just barely didn't get cut is still a great athlete. And so those guys are hustling to get that spot. And I've seen some of the most wonderful, most skilled, most athletic people just fall off, never make it in the NFL, never make it in the NBA and MLB. Like, we're kind of go through all of this because they didn't have to push themselves, because they were just good at it. I like this kind of lesson also to go with, resiliency, as we're talking about physical resiliency. You speak just a little bit, and then we'll get into talking about business, a little bit about mental resiliency.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I think your biggest learning experiences come from your losses, right? Come from your setbacks. And it's having the fortitude and the mindset to know it's inevitable. There are going to be setbacks. There are going to be challenging events. I know, unfortunately, our society, I've experienced we all experienced three major society setbacks. With the terror attacks of 2001, I was very close to that. I saw the towers, literally fall. We have a view of the World Trade Center at certain areas in my one building.
Yeah.
That was devastating. 2008, the financial crisis. A lot of the younger people might not remember, but our economy suffered the biggest financial crisis since the Great Depression of 19, I think it was 29 or 1930. So it was a huge financial setback in 2008. And we had COVID, hit us. So, every 10 years, there's going to be another massive setback. How do you prepare for that? In some ways, you just have to be on your game, but that life has these setbacks. And after every one of those, we literally got stronger. Like, we literally got better. It forced us to regroup, retool, reload, and come back and attack, right? So we don't want those things to happen. And those are big things, right? Those are big setbacks. Yeah. And then we have, other setbacks in our life every day, relationship setbacks, employee retention setbacks, whatever it may be, personal setbacks. We have 120 affiliate locations, and, listen, there's always going to be 10 locations in trouble, divorce, whatever, things come up with people in lives that I'm dealing with, or helping every single day. And I don't look at it as, oh no, here's another challenge. No, here's another opportunity to make an impact, and when you have a setback, you have an opportunity to make a bigger impact. And that's how you have to almost your phraseology. A setback is an opportunity for a massive comeback and to make a big impact. So setback, comeback, impact.
Wow.
That's what it's about, man. That's what life is about. If you always win every single time, you get soft. It's like those kids that were stud athletes when they were younger. They always won. They always were the best. And, they lose that edge. And now when they get to high school or get to college, they're no longer just a natural stud. They never had any setbacks. So bring on the setbacks in your life. Like, invite the setbacks. And that's what's going to make you get fired up to make a comeback and to make an impact.
My man, that was so inspiring right there. I hope your son got that because that was good stuff. That was that was really good stuff. All right, cool, man. Thank you for sharing that. I do appreciate it. Then let's get into it because I want to know what is it about adding in speed training and athletic training and working with maybe not necessarily with athletes, but using athleticism type training and how that can contribute to making me not just a better trainer, but how does that help me build my business?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm going to go pretty deep here, and I'm only going to do that because I have such respect for NASM, and the people that get this certification are dialed in.
Thank
So
you.
if there's any NASM listener that is NASM certified, reach out to us because we would look to engage with you as one of our coaches, right? Because you guys have such great content. And I got certified with NASM back in the 90s, right? I mean, you guys were on it, and I was through the transformation and whatnot. But let me get into some science here,
Okay.
and translate that to business. The ultimate understanding of performance in life is how to manage ground reaction force. So managing ground reaction force is really the key to health and happiness, whether it be your 9-year-old lady trying to, stay out of pain with your knees or back or whatnot, or an athlete trying to dunk a basketball or trying to run real fast or change direction. How we manage ground reaction force, how the biotensegrity organism, this is a tensegrity model, of compression of the wooden struts with tension, held together with tension.
Mhm.
These struts are not touching one another. They're held together with these elastic bands. So compression held together with tension. This is a very energy efficient model, and it's in a form that has pulling and pushing forces that allow it flexibility, but it has some stability. So
Mhm.
it's stable but flexible. It's kind of a paradox. But if you go down to the atom, where there's pushing and pulling forces with the protons, neutrons, electrons, all the way out to the universe of planet Earth, the sun, and the pulling and pushing forces with gravity. This concept of tensegrity is with us everywhere, and it's the foundation to life, and it's a foundation to performance. So let me bring this up a step. That's tensegrity. Doctor medical orthopedic spine surgeon was in the Natural Museum. His name lost me. I'll come up with it in a second. Was in the Natural Museum of History. Stephen Levin, Dr. Stephen Levin, orthopedic spine surgeon. He's in his 90s now. About 40 years ago, was in the Natural Museum of History in Washington, D.C., was looking at these dinosaurs. And he did the math on the amount of muscle the dinosaur was carrying around his neck and his body and whatnot. And he said, this dinosaur doesn't have enough muscles to support its head and manage his head or his tail. It just didn't make sense, too much weight. Then he walked outside and he walked and saw a model like this, but made of steel and more metal cables. And he saw a big tensegrity model, and he coined the word biotensegrity. The body operates more like a plant than a machine. The body's a biotensegrity model of pulling and pushing forces on the bones. And we need to treat it that way. Not too long ago, I was at Arizona and I visited the Biosphere Project, which is a 3-acre greenhouse in Arizona. And I was inside this 3-acre greenhouse, which was a project to determine if we can live out of space. This was built in 1989, completed in 1991. 8 scientists lived in this Biosphere Project for 3 years without any outside oxygen coming in. After about 2 years, they pumped in some oxygen. It was a little bit of an issue going on, but let me make my point. They were living in this place. They had rainforest inside. They had a man-made ocean. They had different deserts and all different environments inside this greenhouse with animals and trees, and tried to survive without any outside air coming in, right? They wanted to create their own oxygen through the plants. Well, trees grew. I mean, they were fed. They had great sunlight. But after the trees got to a certain height, they tipped over because there was no stress wood. There was no wind that built that stress wood. The takeaway is this: the body needs unpredictable stressors to maximize its development and its overall integrity and ultimate athleticism and movement efficiency. So the body's a biointegrity model that needs different type of unpredictable stressors. And that's important to understand when we train. We've been living too much in the sagittal plane. We've been doing too many squats, deadlifts, lunges, step-ups, bench press, overhead press, lat pulls. That sagittal plane is going to develop fascia patterns, or these overdeveloped pathways that is going to challenge our ability to be dynamic and rotate. So an example would be my personal friend and close colleague, Dr. Stuart McGill, that I've worked closely with on a number of different projects. He stayed at my house. He was in New Jersey, so it's great. But we talk about the spine, right? And if you do a lot of heavy loading to the spine, well, that spine and the annulus fibrosis and that collagen network, this is what I've been talking about. Fascia is all collagen, tendons, ligaments, fascia, it's all type 1 collagen. It's just arranged differently in ligaments compared to tendons. Well, that annulus fibrosis, which is a collagen disc, inside is the nucleus pulposus. Well, that collagen is going to become bigger and stronger, and your spine's going to become more like a log when you do a lot of heavy vertical loading. And guess what? Try to twist a log, it's going to break eventually. Well, if you want to be an athlete and be athletic, well, you need your spine to be more like a wire. So that collagen needs to be trained or developed in a way through different types of loading that it's strong, but also can rotate without being injured. And no one has done a better job than Bobby Stroop as an example of a high-level athlete and what he's done with Patrick Mahomes since he was 9 years old. Not many quarterbacks can throw a dime and throw a laser with their feet completely off the ground, being horizontal, to the ground. So creating that whip. So anyway, going back, it was a detailed explanation, but going back to what we need to do. So understanding this connective tissue system, understanding how to use this connective tissue system, this fascia system that has highly neurologically intervened, how to take this system to create pulsing stability and stiffness through co-contractions. And what do I mean? So there's one strategy or one concept to understand is we know the fascia system can be developed by different types of loading and training. Med balls as an example, but there's different fascia training strategies where we're actually laying down more collagen, like Robert Schleip identified on the right pec of our javelin thrower. And we know fascia slings we have, and they get developed based on our sport. So that's one way, right, to build athleticism and avoid injury if we do it correctly. If we do things incorrectly, if we squat too much or sit too much in a position, well, that's going to get developed. The fascia is going to get developed and be injury prone. The other concept is this concept through co-contractions or muscle pulsing. So Stuart McGill's done studies on this, and I'm sure a lot of people are aware. His study with his 5 MMA fighters in 2010, he looked at this muscle pulsing phenomenon. And I linked this study to Peter Weyand's work out of SMU. He was at Harvard in 2000 and SMU now. And I linked it to some other studies, 3 or 4 studies. And this is my presentation I've been giving to, professional strength coaches, Division I football programs, Division I programs. This is one of the big pieces I've been lecturing about, is that when the foot hits the ground, here's the easiest example. When I'm sprinting, at max speed, I'm high world-class sprinter, 25 miles an hour, 26. When that foot hits the ground, it's on and off the ground for a world-class sprinter in 800ths of a second. A high-level high school, college sprinter, 900ths to a 10th of a second, right, for high-level guys. You're on and off the ground in 800ths to a 10th of a second, and you're producing 4 to 5 times your body weight of force. So you're generating 600, 700, 800, 1,000 pounds of force in a 10th of a second. So let's talk about that for a second. What's happening? At that point in time, when the foot is in contact with the ground, there's not a lot of concentric contraction going on, right? It don't have a lot of time to, it's isometric contraction. And there's tons of co-contraction, creating this body to become stiff, where at impact, you're getting that elastic energy and push off from the free energy of the elastic tissues. Now, understanding that concept at foot contact, when I swing a golf club, I bring up the club, I'm relaxed, I drive, I use ground reaction forces to drive my hips. The force gets through my body for club speed. Club speed's coming across at ball contact of the club hitting the ball. Same thing with a baseball batter swinging a bat. At ball contact, everything co-contracts, or should co-contract, to create a statue of steel where I am hitting the ball at ball contact. Everything pulses, everything gets super stiff, and freezing that moment in time at ball contact, everything should be lit up. I'm a statue of steel for that very short milliseconds of time, and then quickly relaxes. And that is muscle pulsing and co-contraction. A football player that might not be a stud in the weight room, but can go out there and they can hit. There's something about certain athletes, they can just create forces, ground reaction force, and hit someone, and they have leverage. Or a basketball player that can box out. You're like, this guy's not that strong, but under the rim, this guy's a beast, and he's so skinny. They've got this unique ability neurologically to co-contract and brace and create pulsing stiffness. That in and of itself, we have a whole protocol, and this is actually what I'm teaching now at my lectures, on how to create pulsing stiffness for all the muscles in the body, to train this phenomenon. And this is the essence of knowing how to utilize ground reaction forces to maximize athletic performance in all different types of sports. And McGill's study goes over it with MMA fighters. He got 5 MMA fighters in his lab, and he went through this in great detail. I linked that study to 4 or 5 other studies that these researchers didn't even know each other, like Peter Weyand, and just understanding his study to Stewart's study. And I spoke to all of them. You know, I had conference calls with these guys, and it was very enlightening. And on some calls, I brought them together.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
You know? And I, and it talks, so understanding that, and that's the same thing with grandma walking down the street, and she steps off a curb, and it was a little deeper than she thought. And then when her foot hits the ground, instead of spraining her ankle or breaking her ankle, she's trained in the gym to co-contract and create stability. Okay. So it's understanding how to create the organism, the body, to self-organize and find these neural pathways to light the system up, to co-contract, to create moments of stiffness, joint stability, super stiffness and joint stability, to allow us to overcome that unexpected ground reaction force coming through the system at an obscure angle that we might not be familiar with. We try to make the system familiar with it by using things like tidal tanks and different training modalities to train the neurology to understand how to co-contract to create pulsing stiffness for safety and optimizing performance. Now, we're not going to go that deep with our clients,
right? But
when you start to train them with this approach, they're like, holy cow, this is unbelievable, the sensations they feel and what they get, and they just become more injury resilient, and that buzz turns into more clients.
Now, I also bet if I'm watching somebody train like that, then my eye is definitely going to look more at what is that trainer doing, because it's interesting, it's unique, it's more than just bench and squat and lat pull and those things. It's a very dynamic type of training, I'm assuming, right?
It's dynamic systems training, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I've done a deep dive in dynamic systems, and it's understanding how the neurology intervenes with the muscle and the fascia, and the role fascia plays to facilitate these co-contractions and these moments of pulsing, quote unquote, stiffness slash stability.
Right.
But it's understanding how to create the ability to create that joint stability in a pulsing manner. So it's very important not only how fast you can contract a muscle, but how fast can you relax. And the example I give, if I had a guy that can bench press 600 pounds standing right here, and I had Bruce Lee standing over here, I would rather get punched in the chest by the 600-pound bench presser, because he's probably not going to kill me. Bruce Lee, if he unloaded in my chest, he would kill me.
Yeah, your heart would stop.
Yeah, I mean, it would stop. I mean, the impact would just go right through my chest, right? Just collapse my chest. So understanding that Bruce Lee can't bench press nearly as much as that 600-pound bench presser, but the ability for a martial artist, a skill to control their neurology, and the driver is not just muscle, it's neurology, muscle, and connective tissue all working together. Missing link has been connective tissues, how to manage it, how to train it. And I've done a lot of work with Keith Barr in terms of been to his lab. He's one of the leading US scientists on tendons and connective tissue. It's very exciting, the work that hopefully we're going to be starting soon with Keith, in terms of some new research studies we want to put out there with my good friend Michel Delcourt, who's the inventor of the Viper.
Oh,
so,
yeah, he's amazing.
Yeah. So my network is really vast and deep. The nice thing about my network is I have really deep relationships with a lot of the top, scientists out there and coaches out there that we, share best practices. And I'm excited to help bring their information out to the masses so everyone can be more successful, ultimately providing more cutting edge training so they can provide them with a better life, and our coaches and your trainers can make a better living.
Oh, that's what I like to hear. Coach Parisi, man, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be here and talk to our NASM CPTs. And I know they get a lot out of it. If you don't mind, maybe share just one last thing. If they want to learn more about you, your business, the fascial training, how can they go about doing that?
Yeah, I mean, we have a number of ways to learn more. We have a number of different, opportunities for people to engage. So first, we have our Anatomy of Speed certification, which is obviously incorporates a lot of our fascia training and dynamic systems and whatnot. That's online at go to parisischool.com and check out certification. We have an online course and a live course. You can do one, you can do both. We have different forms of ongoing resources and mentorships. The Fascia Training Academy has a course called Fascia Fitness for the general population, which goes deep. And Robert Schleip is a big part of that, a top German scientist. And that's actually taught by our fellow German partners that we have, that are cutting edge. And where I learned a lot of this techniques, the Fascia Fitness course. So that's under fasciatrainingacademy.com. And, those are ways to learn, and, just reach out to us. And, we have a great network of 600 coaches. We're excited about our collaboration with NASM and our continued talks to do potentially more work with you guys on many levels. And we're here to help, and anybody can reach out to me. Just send us an email through the info@parisischool.com, and we're happy to get on more detailed collaboration talks.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Coach Parisi. I appreciate it. And I want to say thank you to you. Thanks for listening and making it to the end of this episode. And if you have, please do this: like, subscribe, share with your fitness friends and family, and leave a 5-star review. Also, if you want to reach out to me, hit me up. You can do so by Instagram. It's dr.rickrichey, or you can email me, rick.richey@nasm.org. Shout out to our producer, Eric Sorensen. Y'all keep inspiring people to fitness. Thanks for listening. This has been the NASM CPT Podcast.